At 7:31 p.m., Crimea's radar picked up ghost signals. They masked the approach of a precise strike, one that would turn silence into destruction within minutes. On September 21, 2025, chandeliers lit the seaside residence. Long tables held plates of venison and fish, glasses raised in toasts. Officers, aides, and commanders spoke quietly, unaware of what was approaching. They were 200 kilometers from the nearest Ukrainian position. Outside, the Black Sea rolled against the shore. Search radars swept in intervals. Panzer units covered the coast. At the tables, officers spoke of progress, discipline, and orders. Phones checked updates from the front. None looked to the horizon as their focus was inland. The guesthouse faced the sea. Built on Soviet foundations, renovated with marble and glass, it housed senior military staff. Inside, cigar smoke and the sound of cutlery filled the air. Every movement assumed no intrusion. Ukrainian reconnaissance had monitored for weeks. Satellite imagery identified the location. Signal intercepts confirmed schedules. Drones recorded supply convoys and guard rotations. The operation relied on precise timing. The banquet confirmed the moment. At the far table, a general spoke briefly. Glasses were raised and cameras recorded. On the Black Sea horizon, shapes advanced. They were too small to trigger alarms. Electric motors left no exhaust plumes or heavy signatures. Guidance systems corrected drift. Their course was fixed. The banquet's timing provided cover. Inside, conversation continued. Officers remained unaware as every sweep of radar, every guard, every commander was behind the clock. The strike was not hours away. It was minutes. At 7:31 p.m., radar stations along Crimea's western edge registered faint, irregular echoes over the Black Sea. Operators noted thin traces appearing and vanishing, signals inconsistent enough to resemble clutter, yet steady enough to warrant attention. For a moment, duty crews hesitated, aware that overreaction could trigger false alarms. The atmosphere in the monitoring rooms was tense. Approaching from the horizon were Ukrainian drones configured for endurance and low detectability. They moved in staggered formation, each separated by a calculated distance. This distribution forced Russian defenses to divide tracking capacity, reducing interception efficiency. Engines emitted minimal acoustic signatures, blending with coastal noise. Civilian vessels near the shore registered nothing unusual. The drones maintained altitudes designed to complicate radar locks. Flying low, they merged into the background interference from the sea surface clutter. Ukrainian operators had studied Crimea's defensive grid for months, mapping coverage gaps and electronic warfare patterns. The drones exploited these vulnerabilities to advance undetected. Encrypted relays in Ukrainian control centers coordinated every shift of the formation. Operators monitored Russian radar activity in real time, noting each sweep and silent sector. The absence of detection was as valuable as contact. Ukrainian crews calculated the precise moment Russian systems would hesitate, advancing accordingly. Russian air defense officers faced growing uncertainty. Ignoring signals risked missing a genuine threat. Escalating without confirmation risked wasting resources and revealing positions. The balance of caution and urgency narrowed by seconds. At 7:32 p.m., radar posts along Crimea's western coast registered movement. Screens showed faint, ordered blips, small, consistent, and deliberate. Operators noted the pattern without speaking. The formation was already emerging. The ghost chain was active with Nebo-U, 5 drone boat carrying 6 OSA FPV drones with 1.5-pound shaped charges. Each unit adjusted continuously, guided by encrypted communication and preloaded coordinates. Across the Black Sea, their movement was coherent, deliberate, and silent. Control stations hundreds of kilometers away monitored feeds. Data streams displayed altitude, speed, bearing, and environmental conditions. Algorithms integrated this data, ensuring every drone maintained formation with centimeter-level accuracy. The system operated without direct intervention, each node adjusting for the others. The result was a moving chain of near-invisible vectors. On radar screens, operators observed anomalies. Small signals appeared briefly and disappeared, their consistency unlike natural clutter. Yet the formation produced no sustained radar return. It moved in a controlled stealth mode, avoiding detection. Inside a coastal command post, an officer reviewed the chain's alignment. Positional data confirmed a steady advance toward designated coordinates. Adjustments were minor, fractional changes in altitude and course, but critical. Each drone shifted in sequence, maintaining the chain's integrity and readiness. The chain was split into linked subunits, each maintaining communication with the others. Data exchange ensured dynamic adaptation to conditions. Altitude, speed, and trajectory were continuously recalculated. The formation compressed as it approached its target zone. Movement became tighter, more precise. The first real sign of danger was mechanical. Minor altitude shifts, coordinated and deliberate. These adjustments marked the beginning of the attack phase. The ghost chain was now in position. The next seconds would decide whether the coordinated approach became the opening strike. The Black Sea held still. The chain moved silently, unseen and unbroken. At 7:37 p.m., a flurry of alerts broke the quiet at a Russian naval outpost. Radar picked up a fast-moving object crossing the Black Sea's surface, heading toward a high-value sector. Operators tracked it in real time. Screens lit with data. Brief chatter confirmed the object's identity. A drone! Orders followed instantly. Air defense crews scrambled assets. A Panzer battery powered up. Tracking arrays locked onto the target. Commanders spoke of interception within moments. At 7:38 p.m., an explosion answered those orders. The target was hit, and smoke trailed upward. Crews assumed a victory as a drone had been destroyed. Confirmation was broadcast across naval channels. On the surface, the air was filled with quiet confidence. Reports circulated that the threat had been neutralized. But the destruction was exactly what Ukraine intended. This was no ordinary drone. It was a decoy, engineered for sacrifice. Its flight path was designed to draw attention, trigger a response, and consume defensive resources. Its loss was part of a larger strategy. Behind the scenes, Ukrainian operators monitored the kill in real time. Telemetry confirmed the decoy's destruction, but at that moment, the ghost chain, an entirely separate formation, continued unimpeded, shifting into position. The decoy's sacrifice had cleared a path, and the chain remained undetected. The first kill was celebrated in Russian command rooms. Reports circulated of a successful interception. But the reality was different. The victory was an illusion. The decoy had been a calculated loss, an element in a wider operation built on misdirection. In those minutes, the rhythm of battle changed. Russian attention shifted to the wrong target. Ukraine gained time, space, and surprise. The Black Sea, under watch, had been quietly rewritten. At 7:49 p.m., Sevastopol's air defense network began to fray. Radar operators reported multiple blips crossing different sectors of the sky. Some signals vanished, others reappeared. The readings were inconsistent, echoes that refused to settle into patterns. On the command bridge, officers exchanged terse words. Screens showed conflicting data. One console placed a target to the west, another to the southeast. Reports streamed in from separate radar posts. No consensus emerged. The air was filled with uncertainty. Commanders ordered scans repeated. Layers of sensors were brought online. Patrol aircraft were vectored to investigate. Searchlights swept the dark horizon. Anti-air batteries shifted arcs, but the tracks kept shifting. Every system gave a different answer. At that moment, psychological tension thickened. The uncertainty was itself a weapon. Crews had trained for precision, for data they could trust. Now they faced anomalies, signals that blurred fact and fiction. Operators questioned whether these were genuine threats or electronic ghosts. Overhead, the night felt alive with something unseen. Voices on the bridge rose. Commands overlapped. Data feeds were interrupted by bursts of static. Radar screens flashed with sudden bursts before going black. Communication channels are filled with fragments of chatter, warnings, calls for confirmation, and conflicting interpretations. Each operator sought to be certain, yet certainty slipped further away. Commanders scrambled to adjust. Protocols were invoked. Manual tracking was engaged. Screens were cross-checked against visual reports from observers along the coast. Yet no unified picture emerged. The air defense grid operated on fragments, acting on incomplete information. In those minutes, the defensive rhythm broke. The sky over Sevastopol became a landscape of confusion. The sensors were alive, but so too were the questions. What was approaching, from where, and why could it not be locked? In the dark above the harbor, the first cracks in the air defense were forming, and somewhere beyond detection, the ghost chain moved into place. At 7:50 p.m., the air over the Crimean coastline was still. No wind stirred, no waves broke more than a gentle sigh against the shore. Sensors recorded nothing unusual. Yet, in hidden command posts and distant control rooms, a different clock was counting down. On board a coastal command post, a team of operators reviewed target coordinates. They had minutes to decide, but the decision was already clear. The objective was the sanatorium complex, a cluster of reinforced buildings housing a command node and radar arrays. Its loss would be a blow far greater than its size suggested. Target selection was not random. It was the result of weeks of surveillance, risk analysis, and strategic calculation. Across the formation, coordination tightened. Signals moved between drones in coded bursts, silent to outside eyes. One drone became the pathfinder, another the striker, others the shield. They moved as one. The system was a living chain. The first strike would open a blind, the second would exploit it. Timing was the weapon. Commanders in the control room counted down the seconds. Fingers hovered over activation panels. Operators cross-checked feeds from multiple sources. Outside, the night held its breath. On the ground in Sevastopol, crews manned stations with an uneasy steadiness. They did not know how close the danger already was. At 7:55 p.m. sharp, the silence broke. The first drones entered the final approach. They cut through the sea air at low altitude, skimming the water's surface. Their sound was minimal, a whisper beneath the hum of waves. Every movement was calculated to avoid detection. Inside the sanatorium's command hub, systems flickered. Operators began to notice anomalies, brief drops in feed, static bursts on screens. The indicators were subtle, but enough to pull attention. Across multiple posts, the same brief signal spike appeared. At that moment, the strike chain was complete. Decision and movement merged. The first drones aligned for impact. The seconds ahead were the last before the storm. The silence was not peace. It was the calm before execution. At 8 p.m., silence gave way to the first shockwave. The sanatorium's outer perimeter shuddered as a controlled impact tore through reinforced concrete. The sound was sharp, sudden, a metallic crack carried over the water. Inside the command hub, lights flickered, consoles sparked, and warning sirens cut through the night. The first explosion was precise. It struck the facility's main structural node, a reinforced section designed to withstand much heavier assaults. Dust and fragments erupted outward in a wave. Panels warped, steel supports groaned under the force. Sensors recorded the impact in fragmented bursts before succumbing to interference. Seconds later, the second detonation followed. The air filled with the roar of fire and the scent of burning circuitry. Flames licked the edges of the collapsed roof. Electrical panels burst in flashes of molten wire. The command hub's backbone shuddered as pressure built inside sealed compartments. The noise was now a chorus of destruction, steel tearing, glass shattering, alarms warbling in distorted echoes. Windows in adjacent structures cracked in radial fractures. Smoke billowed in thick, acrid clouds. The sound of collapsing steel beams was deafening in the enclosed compound. Outside, cameras recorded sudden blackouts, the visual feed replaced by static. A single frame showed the roof splitting inwards, a jagged seam of flame and dust marking the breach. Inside the building, chaos spread. Crews scrambled for exits, orders overlapped in rising panic. Communications faltered as power systems failed. The air grew heavy with heat and smoke. Movement slowed, replaced by a fight for survival. From above, drones circled. Their feeds showed the collapse in real time, an engineered destruction, swift and decisive. Each feed confirmed the same sequence: targeted breach, structural failure, collapse. Nothing accidental. Every second of the strike had been calculated. The main support structure gave way. A section of the sanatorium's upper floors pancaked downward. The sound was a deep, resonant thud, followed by a grinding roar as steel and concrete merged in ruin. Smoke poured from the breach, a thick plume illuminated by sporadic bursts of flame. On the ground, dust choked the air. Crews regrouped under cover. Communications were fragmented. Somewhere, a single encrypted message echoed through command channels. Sanatorium compromised. Target neutralized. The structure lay in ruins. Fire spread unchecked. Command capability in that sector collapsed within 90 seconds. The strike had ended. The night carried the weight of destruction. Silence returned, but it was a silence heavy with consequence. At dawn over Crimea, the sanatorium lay in ruin. Smoke curled into pale light, twisting above the shattered frame like a warning. The water nearby caught the first rays of the sun, glinting over debris that drifted from the wreck. Silence reigned where hours before there had been orders and motion. For Russia, the loss was a blow beyond the physical. It was proof that even fortified positions could be undone in minutes. For Ukraine, it was confirmation that precision, planning, and deception could alter battlefields without mass fleets or artillery barrages. On shore, crews walked among the wreckage. Faces were pale, eyes fixed on scorched steel. Commanders adjusted plans. Analysts redrew risk maps. Across Crimea, the perception of security had shifted. The war had crossed a threshold. The age of predictable front lines was over. The smoke lingered. So did the understanding. Nothing was untouchable anymore. What do you think? Was this precision strike genius or something more? Comment below and subscribe for the next Frontline story.